Greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that His presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. Well, it is Christmas Eve morning here in San Diego, and I should be grading papers, but I've been thinking about Christmas Eve services and candle lighting services and Advent services where we light the candles, and just thinking about how Jesus is the light of the world and the light that is coming into the world. And thinking about Jesus as the light, that kind of took me to John 8, where Jesus says, I am the light of the world, and that those who follow Him no longer walk in darkness, but He is the light of life for all of us who follow Him. And then that got me thinking a little bit about John chapter 1 and how the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. The darkness cannot comprehend it. The darkness doesn't understand it. The light is just incomprehensible to the darkness, and the darkness cannot overpower the light. And then that got me reading kind of a little bit further down into John chapter 1 and how the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory. And then you get this language, shows up a couple times about grace and truth, that in Jesus there is grace and truth, and grace upon grace. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking especially about this morning in terms of the light and grace and truth, that Jesus is the light of the world, that when we follow Him, we no longer walk in darkness, but He's the light of life. And just thinking, okay, what does that mean that Jesus is the light of life? And where I've kind of landed today is that phrase, grace and truth, that He is our light and that He is the one who provides us grace and truth. Now, I've been grading papers a lot lately, and I still have more grading to do. And grace and truth kind of becomes categories for how to grade papers. Am I going to be truthful with them about it? And, just kind of mark up the paper, mark up their essay answer, and just hit them with a load of truth? Or am I going to be graceful about it and just give them kind of a kind grade and not really give them what they deserve? And that a lot of times becomes how we think about grace and truth. Truth that just, blows somebody up, or grace to where you just kind of overlook, what the issues are. But really, if that's my way of understanding grace and truth, it's not really all that helpful, to just kind of blow somebody up with truth. That doesn't really help them. And at the same time, to just kind of overlook things and show them quote unquote grace, that doesn't really help them. See, what we see Jesus doing is He doesn't work with kind of our contemporary understanding of grace means to turn away from sin and overlook it, or truth means that you blow someone up with their sin, with their mistakes, their transgressions. That's kind of a contemporary understanding of grace and truth, but that's not what we see Jesus doing. That what we see Jesus doing is, He confronts us with the truth about who we are. He's constantly showing people who they are, kind of holding up a mirror to them, making them look at themselves. He makes us look at ourselves. But Jesus is also the truth about who God is, the truth about God's love, the truth about God's commitment to bring salvation, and the commitment, so the truth about God's mercy and steadfast love. That's what we see in Jesus. So He doesn't just kind of blow us up, with truth about us, but even more, He shows us the truth of who God is, and He shows us who we can become, that we can become children of God. Jesus brings the light to help us see that. And same thing in terms of grace, that is not a grace that simply kind of overlooks our sins or overlooks, our faults or our problems or our issues. It's a grace to help us look and see and change and to be changed. And so the grace of forgiveness, but also the grace of transformation. And so when we walk in the light, then what we begin to see is ourselves more clearly, but also we see God more clearly, and we see who we can become through Christ. And what we discover is that Jesus offers us the grace, the power, the presence of God for that transformation. So grace is not simply kind of looking away, and truth is not simply blowing up, but grace and truth, kind of this combination in Jesus to show us who we are, to show us who God is, and that through God we can be changed, we can receive the grace to become children of God. Maybe we need more of an Old Testament flavor to this understanding of grace and truth. In the Old Testament, God is understood as being full of steadfast love and faithfulness. And that shows up across the pages of the Old Testament. And these are the words that grace and truth kind of correlate to, this steadfast love and this faithfulness. And so truth in terms of being true, truth in terms of being faithful. And so God is the true one. God is the faithful one. God is the one who is always there and never bails out. And so Jesus, when we walk in his light, we're walking in the light of who God is, that God is truthful, that God is faithful, that God is true, full of integrity and commitment to fulfill his promises to bring salvation. And steadfast love, again, God's love, God's grace is steadfast. It's not whimsical. It's not maybe not. God's love is dependable, reliable, steadfast, loyal. And so just thinking about that in terms of all the candle lighting that's going to go on this Christmas, and Sunday we'll be lighting the Christ candle, and just thinking, okay, Jesus is the light that comes into the world, and when we believe in him, we no longer walk in darkness, but he's the light of life. What does that exactly mean? Well, I think it means that in Jesus we come to know the steadfast love and the faithfulness of God. That God is true to save. That God is faithful to keep on loving and never bail out on us. And when we walk in that light, we see God more clearly, we see ourselves more clearly, and we begin to discover that he is present and gracing us to change us and to make us more like Jesus. Well, God bless. Hope you have a great day this Christmas Eve. And as you light candles during this season, just remember that Jesus reveals God's grace to us, God's truth to us, steadfast love and faithfulness. Have a great season. God bless.